The Spanish flu, 1918, the pandemic before the word existed. The year was 1918. The world was already bleeding from 4 years of brutal war. In the trenches of Europe and the camps of America, soldiers fought, starved, and prayed for peace. But even as the thunder of cannons began to fade, another enemy crept silently into their ranks. It was not made of steel or fire, but it would prove deadlier than the Great War itself. At a military camp in Kansas, United States, the first whispers of illness began. Soldiers grew weak with fever. Some coughed so hard their lungs bled, their lips turning blue from lack of air. At first, doctors dismissed it as a seasonal flu, but this sickness spread with terrifying speed, leaping from bunk to bunk, then camp to camp, carried across the Atlantic by young soldiers heading to war. With them, the invisible killer marched into France, Britain, and Germany. The war became its greatest ally. Crowded troop ships, hospitals, and trains became breeding grounds. Wherever the soldiers went, the virus followed. Soon, it was no longer just an army's affliction. It was the world's. Cities began to collapse from within. Streets once filled with markets and laughter fell eerily silent. Theaters, schools, and churches were closed. Only the sound of ambulance bells and funeral processions echoed through the emptiness. Doctors and nurses fought valiantly, but they had no real weapons. There were no vaccines, no antibiotics, no oxygen machines, only cloth masks, bandages, and hope. Families tried desperate remedies: garlic, whiskey, herbal teas. Governments issued posters urging people to cover their mouths and avoid crowds. Yet the flu mocked these efforts, spreading relentlessly across continents. Philadelphia became a symbol of the nightmare. After holding a massive parade despite warnings, the city saw its hospitals overflow within days. Bodies piled so high that mass graves were dug, coffins ran out, and horse-drawn carts carried the dead by the dozens. Similar scenes unfolded across the globe, from America to India, from Africa to the Pacific Islands. Even the most remote villages in Alaska could not escape its reach. By the end of 1918, the scale was staggering. In a single year, 500 million people had been infected, 1 out of every 3 humans alive. At least 50 million were dead, more than the battlefield casualties of the entire war. In some armies, more soldiers perished from flu than from bullets. Victory in war was hollow, overshadowed by mourning. And yet, the world moved on quickly. Unlike wars, there were no monuments, no victory parades. The dead of the Spanish flu were buried quietly, their stories fading into silence. By 1920, the waves of infection slowed and the virus seemed to vanish, leaving behind grieving families but few lessons learned. The Spanish flu was the pandemic before the word even existed. It showed how fragile human triumph can be, and how nature's smallest enemy can humble entire empires. A century later, its shadow still lingers, a warning etched into history that sometimes the deadliest battles are not fought with swords or guns, but with breath itself.